If you stop moving completely and never do any exercise for the rest of your life, you might assume you will just get a bit soft, gain some weight, and lose your physical stamina. But that assumption is a dangerous biological illusion. Aerospace medical research reveals that by refusing to stress your muscles, instead of simply remaining at a harmless baseline, your body flips an ancient evolutionary switch that actively dissolves your bone matrix, violently shrinks your brain tissue, and completely rewrites your cellular DNA to prepare you for premature decay. The sensation begins in the quietest, most comfortable place in your life. You are sitting on the couch. Your heart rate is resting at a steady 65 beats per minute. You feel completely relaxed, entirely safe from the physical stress of the outside world. But beneath your skin, your biology is interpreting this profound lack of movement not as relaxation and not as safety. It is interpreting it as a fatal emergency. To your central nervous system, human existence is binary. You are either moving through the environment to hunt, gather, and survive, or you are severely injured and waiting to die. There is no biological blueprint for voluntary chronic stillness. And so, the moment you decide to never exercise again, your body initiates a ruthless, highly efficient process of self-demolition. It is fundamentally a matter of cellular economics. The human body is a brilliant but unforgiving accountant. It refuses to spend precious biological currency maintaining tissue that you are not actively using. Within the first 48 hours of total inactivity, the first invisible domino falls inside your bloodstream. Because your muscles are no longer demanding high volumes of oxygen, your body realizes it is carrying around too much blood. Maintaining blood volume requires energy. So, your kidneys receive a chemical signal to begin rapidly filtering out water from your blood plasma. Within days, your total blood volume drops by nearly 10%. Your blood literally becomes thicker, more viscous, and harder to pump. At the same time, the thousands of microscopic capillaries that thread through your muscle tissue, the tiny highways that deliver oxygen to your cells, begin to physically collapse and die off. The infrastructure is being boarded up. You do not feel this happening. You just feel a little bit more tired when you stand up to walk to the kitchen. But the real metabolic crisis is just beginning to unfold. As you cross the 2-week mark of zero exercise, the chemistry of your digestive system starts to violently malfunction. Every time you eat a meal, glucose floods into your bloodstream. Normally, the physical contraction of your muscles acts as a powerful vacuum, instantly pulling that toxic sugar out of the blood and burning it for fuel. But because you are not moving, those muscular doors are tightly locked shut. The glucose has nowhere to go. It begins to scrape against the delicate inner lining of your blood vessels like microscopic shards of glass. In a desperate panic to get this sugar out of your blood, your pancreas starts pumping out massive, unprecedented waves of insulin, but your sedentary muscle cells are deaf to the signal. And they have downregulated their insulin receptors. This is the rapid onset of insulin resistance. Because the muscles refuse to take the fuel, your liver is forced to convert this floating glucose into highly inflammatory visceral fat, packing it tightly around your internal organs. Your metabolism is effectively suffocating itself, but you haven't even reached the 1-month mark yet. What happens next inside your actual muscle tissue is terrifying. You might think that if you stop exercising, your muscles just passively deflate like a balloon losing air. But muscle atrophy is not passive. It is a highly aggressive, targeted biological assassination. By week 4, your DNA activates a specialized group of enzymes known as the ubiquitin proteasome system. Think of these enzymes as a cellular demolition crew. They hunt down the contractile proteins inside your muscle fibers, the very proteins that allow you to lift a child, climb a flight of stairs, or catch yourself if you fall. The enzymes tag these proteins with a chemical marker of death. Once tagged, the proteins are fed into a biological shredder, torn apart, and dissolved into amino acids to be flushed out of the body. Your body specifically targets your type 2 fast-twitch muscle fibers first. These are the fibers responsible for power, speed, and reaction time. In the wild, losing these fibers means you cannot sprint away from a predator. In the modern world, losing these fibers means that one day, decades from now, you will trip on a rug and your nervous system will not have the sheer physical power to snap your leg forward fast enough to catch your balance. You will fall and your bones will shatter. And they will shatter because of what is happening deep inside your skeletal system right now. We tend to think of our skeleton as a dead, rigid structure, like the steel scaffolding of a building, but your bones are completely alive. They are highly dynamic, vascularized tissue that is constantly being destroyed and rebuilt every single day. This process is managed by two types of cells: osteoclasts, which dissolve old bone, and osteoblasts, which build new, dense bone in its place. But this entire skeletal construction project is entirely dependent on gravity and mechanical impact. When you run, jump, or lift weights, the physical bending and stressing of the bone creates a microscopic electrical charge, a phenomenon known as the piezoelectric effect. This electrical charge is the exact signal that tells the osteoblasts to build more bone. If you never exercise, that electrical signal falls completely silent. By month 6 of absolute inactivity, the builder cells go to sleep, but the destroyer cells, the osteoclasts, keep working. They begin aggressively hollowing out your skeleton from the inside. Your bones become porous, brittle, and weak, resembling the internal structure of a dry sponge. This is the exact same physiological crisis that NASA astronauts experience in the zero-gravity vacuum of space. Without the mechanical stress of gravity and movement, an astronaut's body will rapidly consume its own skeleton. By choosing never to exercise, you are subjecting yourself to the exact same zero-gravity decay, right here on Earth. And yet, the destruction of your muscles and bones is only the mechanical failure. The true catastrophe of a life without exercise is happening deep inside your cellular power grid. Inside every single cell in your body are microscopic engines called mitochondria. These are the power plants that generate ATP, the fundamental energy currency of human life. When you exercise, you force your cells to build thousands of new, highly efficient mitochondria to meet the energy demand. But when you lock yourself in a state of permanent rest, your body realizes it has a massive oversupply of energy it doesn't need. The body responds by executing a process called mitochondrial apoptosis. Your power plants literally begin to self-destruct. The ones that remain alive become mutated, sluggish, and highly dysfunctional. Instead of producing clean energy, they start leaking toxic byproducts called reactive oxygen species into your cells. These toxic molecules bounce around violently, damaging your DNA and rusting your biology from the inside out. This creates a state of chronic, low-grade systemic inflammation. Your immune system senses this microscopic cellular damage and assumes you are under attack by a severe infection. It deploys white blood cells and inflammatory cytokines to fight a pathogen that doesn't actually exist. This hyperactive, confused immune response begins to attack your own healthy tissues. Your joints ache constantly. You wake up feeling exhausted after 10 hours of sleep. You feel like you have a mild flu that never, ever goes away. Your body is rusting. But as you cross the 1-year mark of never exercising, the most devastating consequence of all reaches the human brain. We have a massive cultural blind spot. We assume that exercise is simply a tool to change the shape of our bodies from the neck down. But evolutionary neuroscientists will tell you that the human brain did not evolve to do calculus, to write poetry, or to scroll through a smartphone. The human brain evolved primarily to control complex movement. When you move your body through space, your heart pumps a massive surge of highly oxygenated blood directly into your skull. This blood carries a miraculous protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. As mentioned in clinical literature, BDNF is the miracle grow for the brain. It physically builds new neural pathways, repairs damaged brain cells, and actively expands the size of your hippocampus, the region of the brain responsible for memory, learning, and emotional regulation. If you never elevate your heart rate, this BDNF flood is permanently choked off. Without this neurochemical fertilizer, your brain tissue literally begins to shrink. The neural networks in your hippocampus begin to wither and disconnect. Your memory starts to fray. You find it harder to learn new concepts. But the most immediate impact is on your emotional state. Without the natural flood of endorphins, dopamine, and serotonin that muscle contraction produces, your brain chemistry tilts heavily toward anxiety and depression. Evolutionary biology explains exactly why this happens. In the wild, if an animal stops moving, it means it is injured, sick, or starving. The brain responds by shutting down the desire to explore, inducing a state of apathy and depression to force the animal to hide in a cave and conserve energy. When you choose to never exercise, your brain genuinely believes you are dying in a cave. It locks you in a psychological prison of apathy, making the thought of ever starting an exercise routine feel completely impossible. And this is where we must confront a massive, culturally destructive misconception. You might look at yourself in the mirror and think, I am naturally thin, I don't gain weight easily, my clothes still fit perfectly, therefore, I don't actually need to exercise. This is perhaps the most dangerous myth in modern health. The belief that thinness equals biological health is completely false. Medical science has identified a terrifying phenomenon known as TOFI, thin on the outside, fat on the inside. You can have a perfectly flat stomach while your liver is choking on visceral fat, your arteries are calcifying, your bones are turning to chalk, and your brain is actively shrinking. Exercise has almost nothing to do with manipulating the number on a scale. Exercise is the fundamental language of cellular signaling. It is the only way to tell your DNA that you are still actively participating in the survival of the organism. If you are not sending the signal of growth, the only other signal available is the signal of decay. But as dark and inevitable as this biological timeline sounds, there is a profound, almost miraculous counter-truth hiding in the center of human physiology. Your body is not holding a grudge. It is not permanently broken. It is simply waiting for you to give it the right command. The human body is the most remarkably plastic, adaptive machine in the known universe. The moment you decide to break the cycle of stillness, everything changes. The second you step outside, elevate your heart rate, and force your muscles to contract under tension, the ancient alarms shut off. The demolition crews are instantly fired. Within a single 30-minute session of resistance training or elevated cardiovascular work, your muscles violently pull the glucose out of your blood, reversing the path of insulin resistance. Within weeks, the piezoelectric effect reignites inside your skeleton, waking up the builder cells to physically lay down new, dense bone matrix. Your cardiovascular system rapidly forces new capillaries to branch out and grow, restoring the vascular infrastructure. The brain detects the forward movement and floods your skull with BDNF, physically growing your hippocampus and washing away the chemical apathy of depression. You do not need to become an elite athlete to trigger this reversal. You do not need to suffer through torturous, extreme routines that leave you broken and exhausted. That is the mentality of punishment, not physiology. Your biology simply requires the minimum effective dose of consistent mechanical stress. It requires you to lift heavy things a few times a week to remind your muscles they are needed. It requires you to elevate your heart rate to remind your vascular system to stay open. It requires you to move with intention. But you must heed a severe biological warning. If you have spent a decade in absolute stillness, your structural integrity is heavily compromised. Your tendons are stiff, and your joints are unlubricated. If you allow sudden motivation to trick you into attempting a massive, extreme workout on day one, your connective tissue will snap. You must treat your body like an engine that has been sitting in a frozen garage for years. You must warm it up slowly. You must respect the rust before you try to break the speed limit. Consistency is a million times more powerful than intensity. As you sit there right now, reading these words or listening to this reality, you might feel a heavy sense of regret for the years you have spent entirely still. You might feel disconnected from your own physical form, as if you are merely a brain being carried around by a fragile, failing vehicle. But that disconnect is an illusion. You are not permanently damaged. Your metabolism is not destroyed. Your biology is simply paused. Every single cell in your body is quietly standing by, waiting in the dark for the singular mechanical spark that proves you are still fighting to survive. The decay is not a life sentence. It is just a default setting that you have the absolute power to override at any given moment. You possess, right now, the exact physiological architecture of an apex predator, built to move, to adapt, and to regenerate against all odds. You just have to stand up and send the signal. Thank you for joining us today on Health Insight as we dive deeper into your wellness journey. If you found these tips valuable, please give this video a thumbs up to help us reach more people. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated on all things health. We want to make sure our next video covers exactly what you need to know. Drop a comment below and tell us what health topic or medical mystery you'd like us to explore next. Until next time, stay proactive, stay informed, and stay healthy.